Respect isn't given. It's not something you can demand, buy, or fake. It's earned quietly, through character, not volume. And in a world of constant noise, the Stoics found a way to be heard without speaking. They understood something we often forget, that the most powerful person in the room is often the one who says the least, yet acts with the most discipline, purpose, and integrity. You're not here because you want popularity. You're here because you want to be respected. Not liked. Not followed. Respected. By your peers, your family, your team, and most importantly, yourself. And if you study the men who left empires in their silence, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, you'll find not speeches, but habits, practices, ways of living. And those 7 habits still hold the power to transform anyone today into a force so steady, the world around them recalibrates. The first is restraint. In a culture where everyone reacts, the Stoic responds. He pauses, breathes, reflects. While others defend their egos, he defends his peace. He doesn't chase the last word or waste energy proving others wrong. Instead, he walks away, not out of fear, but out of control. The truly respected individual doesn't erupt, because he knows his silence is louder than any outburst. There's nothing more powerful than the man who can stay calm in the storm. But calm isn't passive. And that brings us to the second habit, intentional action. A Stoic doesn't act because it feels good. He acts because it is good. He doesn't chase trends. He pursues virtue. He builds slowly, persistently, brick by brick, with no concern for applause. His reward isn't recognition, it's self-respect. That's the kind of man people trust. You don't follow him because he asks. You follow him because his path is grounded in something unshakable. The third habit is ownership. Not in the modern, shallow sense of claiming success, but in the deeper, harder discipline of owning failure. A Stoic doesn't point fingers. He points the finger inward first. If he fails, he admits it. If he errs, he corrects. And by doing so, he earns a respect that excuses and ego will never buy. Because while others waste their lives blaming the world, the Stoic rewrites his own. And then there's discipline. Habit 4. Discipline is the quiet builder of all greatness. No one respects the man who caves to comfort. They respect the one who rises before dawn, who trains when it hurts, who keeps promises to himself long after motivation fades. Discipline doesn't shout. It shows. And when people see a man who chooses long-term value over short-term pleasure, they don't need to be convinced. They believe. The fifth habit is presence. Not just showing up, but being there. Stoics knew that time is the one currency you never get back. So they paid attention. They listened deeply. They spoke with weight. They didn't multitask relationships or rush through conversations. In a world fractured by distraction, the man who is truly present is a rare and treasured force. He doesn't scatter his attention. He gives it fully. And in doing so, he makes people feel valued, seen, understood. That is how you earn respect without ever asking for it. Then comes service. The sixth habit. A Stoic lives not for self-glorification, but for something beyond himself. Whether it's family, community, or principle, he serves. He sees himself not as the center, but as a contributor to a greater whole. He offers help without expectation. He lifts others, not to be noticed, but because it's the right thing to do. And the world remembers men who served without fanfare. Because real respect is built not on what you take, but on what you give. And finally, the seventh habit, the rarest and most transformative of them all, acceptance. The Stoic doesn't beg reality to be easier. He doesn't curse the wind or cry at fate. He accepts. Not with weakness, but with wisdom. He sees what is and works with it. He adapts. He endures. He finds power not in changing the world, but in mastering his response to it. That kind of resilience, the ability to remain grounded when everything shakes, is what makes people look to him not just in calm, but in crisis. Because the world will always test you. It will disappoint you. It will pull you in every direction but your own. But when you choose these habits, not once, but daily, you stop chasing validation. You stop proving your worth. You become the kind of person others look to, not because you tell them to, but because the life you live commands it. And still, there's more to understand. Because these 7 aren't just habits, they are mirrors. Each one reflecting where you fall short and where you must rise. You'll find yourself failing often. Speaking when silence was stronger. Acting when patience was wiser. Blaming when ownership was braver. And that's the test, not to be perfect, but to catch yourself. To improve. To return to the path. Marcus Aurelius didn't write for fame. His meditations were private. A reminder to himself of how to live better. Stronger. Wiser. And that's your job too. Not to display these virtues, but to practice them relentlessly, quietly, until they shape your character so deeply, others can't help but feel it. Respect isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It walks in slowly, earned by the man who no longer needs it. And that is the paradox. It is the paradox that defines the Stoic, the man who becomes most admired by abandoning the need for admiration. The man whose gravity draws others in, not by demand, but by the sheer weight of who he has become. This kind of respect, it lingers in rooms long after he's gone. It's the quiet glance, the hushed voice of others when his name is mentioned. Not because he was famous, not because he was loud, but because he lived with a depth that few dare to reach. There is something magnetic about someone who no longer needs validation, who is no longer negotiating his worth with the world. That person, he becomes rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. But none of this happens overnight. Stoicism isn't a weekend seminar. It's a lifelong practice, a slow carving of the soul through fire, reflection, and relentless honesty. And each of these habits, they are not boxes to check. They are disciplines that demand your effort on the days you feel strong, and even more on the days you feel weak. Restraint is hardest when your ego is bruised. Ownership bites deepest when your pride is on the line. Discipline whispers to you when everything else begs for comfort. And presence, true presence, demands that you let go of distraction, ego, and control. These things do not come easily. That's why most don't choose this path. It's quieter. It's lonelier. It's slower. But it is real. And the rewards, they are different. Not applause. Not likes. Not empty praise. But inner stillness. Clarity. And the unspoken respect of others who sense something unbreakable in you. People will test you. The world will push you. And sometimes you will feel like your effort is unseen, that your restraint goes unnoticed, that your discipline is unappreciated. But that is where the Stoic separates himself. He doesn't need the world to validate his values. He doesn't require recognition to continue. He is guided not by outcome, but by principle. He is not moved by insult, because his dignity does not depend on others. He is not swayed by temptation, because he has trained his mind to obey what is right, not what is easy. He doesn't follow the crowd, because he knows that the crowd has never built anything lasting. He walks alone if he must, not with bitterness, but with certainty. And slowly, that certainty becomes evident, in how he speaks, in how he listens, in how he shows up. People may not know why they respect him, but they do. Because consistency, integrity, and depth, they shine without spotlight. You want to be respected? Don't chase it. Practice these habits daily, in silence, in struggle, in solitude, because the kind of respect that matters, the kind that lasts, is earned when no one is watching. So the next time you want to raise your voice, lower it. When you feel the urge to prove yourself, step back. When comfort calls, choose discipline instead. When failure strikes, own it. When the world spins with noise, be the stillness in the center. And when you're tempted to ask, will they respect me if I do this? Ask instead, will I respect myself if I don't? Because that's where true respect begins. Not with their eyes, but with your own. And the man who commands his own respect, regardless of the world's applause, becomes the very man the world cannot ignore. The man the world cannot ignore is not always the loudest. He's the one who lives according to an inner law. And that law is forged in solitude, in repetition, in failure, in the quiet moments when no one sees, when the applause is gone, when only the mirror remains. That mirror, unforgiving and raw, becomes his temple. Not a place of vanity, but of truth. And truth, for the Stoic, is everything. He does not seek comfort in illusions. He does not flatter himself with fantasies. He meets reality where it is, cold, sharp, often unkind. But in that meeting, he becomes strong. Because while others waste years resisting what is, he bends with it, shapes himself around it, and eventually moves through it like water carving stone. This is why people start to lean on him without realizing it. Why his presence calms rooms, why his voice carries weight without shouting. He doesn't offer advice recklessly. He offers steadiness. He listens more than he speaks, because he knows that silence reveals more than noise ever could. In a world that's forgotten how to listen, this alone makes him powerful. And power, not the kind that comes from control or fear, but the kind that rises from unshakable inner order, is what the Stoic cultivates. Not for dominance, but for service. Because that, too, is a pillar of respect, usefulness. The man who lives not for applause, but for contribution, who stands not to be admired, but to be of use, becomes the one others trust. He doesn't seek to be needed, but he becomes necessary. Seneca once wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The Stoic does not curse the trials. He knows that in each struggle lies the invitation to sharpen his edge. When others break, he adapts. When others complain, he reflects. When others demand comfort, he pursues growth. And in doing so, he sets himself apart, not through arrogance, but through consistency. Not through charisma, but through character. But let's not mistake this man for a myth. He feels pain. He bleeds. He doubts. He questions. But what makes him respected is that he does not surrender to these feelings. He faces them, works through them, uses them. And when the world sees this, when they watch him wrestle quietly with demons and still walk forward, they respect him not because he is invincible, but because he is real. And maybe that's what respect truly is, recognition of authenticity. A silent bow from one soul to another that says, "You are who you say you are." In a world dominated by performance, the Stoic refuses to act. He simply is. No mask, no script, no performance. Just principles, practiced, day in and day out, until they are not what he does, but who he is. The journey is long. The rewards are slow. But the result is profound. Over time, his presence becomes a standard. His choices become examples. His life becomes a mirror in which others see not just who he is, but who they could be. And though he never sought to lead, people follow. Because they're not following a man, they're following a way. Shall I continue into how this philosophy plays out in real-life modern situations, like in leadership, business, or relationships? And they follow the way, because something in them recognizes the rare. In boardrooms, on battlefields, across kitchen tables, or in quiet moments of crisis, when confusion spreads like wildfire and emotions boil over, people search for someone who does not flinch. Not someone with all the answers, but someone with a grounded center. Someone who stands firm while others fold. That's where the modern Stoic becomes invaluable. In leadership, he doesn't lead by charisma alone, he leads by clarity. While others sell vision, he lives his. He's not obsessed with being liked, because he knows popularity is fragile. Instead, he earns trust by doing what's right, even when it's unpopular. His consistency becomes his authority. When pressure mounts, he doesn't pass blame. He absorbs chaos and returns direction. And his team senses it. They may not always agree with him, but they trust him. Because he never hides behind excuses. He doesn't retreat when the path darkens. He walks into it first. In business, he plays the long game. Where others chase quarterly wins, he builds legacy. Where others sacrifice integrity for gain, he sharpens value through principle. And the marketplace, though chaotic, eventually recognizes this. His word becomes contract. His reputation becomes currency. Not because he advertised it, but because he lived it. The Stoic understands that wealth is not just measured in profit, but in peace. And peace comes when your ambition is aligned with your ethics. In relationships, he becomes the anchor. Not cold or distant, but steady. He doesn't love recklessly. He loves consciously. Not out of dependency, but from fullness. He doesn't manipulate, doesn't seek control, doesn't demand attention. Instead, he offers presence, listens deeply, and communicates truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And because he respects himself first, he attracts relationships built on mutual respect, not need, not performance, not possession. He sets boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect what's sacred. He forgives, not to forget, but to be free. He doesn't argue to win. He speaks to understand. And that maturity, that depth, makes him rare in a world of shallow connections and fleeting loyalty. Even in solitude, his strength endures. He doesn't fear being alone, because he is not lonely, he is aligned. He uses solitude not to escape life, but to reflect on it, to sharpen his edge. And when he returns to the world, he does so clear-eyed, purpose-driven, unmoved by gossip, envy, or the endless thirst for comparison. He is not perfect. He is not emotionless. But he is sovereign. And that sovereignty, that self-possession, is the foundation of all respect. The world may resist it. Some will mock it. Many won't understand it. But all will feel it. That's the quiet power of the Stoic. Over time, others begin to imitate him. Not his clothes, his words, or his posture, but his way of being. Because something deep within them longs for what he has, a calm spirit in a chaotic world, a steady hand in a trembling age, a life ruled not by impulse or fear, but by a quiet, immovable principle. That's what it means to live with respect. Not to demand it. Not to pretend it. But to embody it. So now, the question is not, how can you get others to respect you? And yes, legacy. The Stoic does not obsess over it, but he knows it's inevitable. Because when a man lives with unwavering principle, when his actions ripple with consistency, when his presence calms storms and his decisions echo long after they're made, he leaves something behind. Not in marble statues or lofty biographies, but in the lives he's touched, in the quiet ways he's shaped the world. You see, legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence a son remembers when his father chose patience over fury. Sometimes it's the decision a leader made that no one applauded, but that kept a company or a family from collapsing. Sometimes it's a sentence, spoken once, that someone carries for the rest of their life. The Stoic knows this, that what lasts is not how many people remembered your name, but how many lives were made better because you stood firm when it would have been easier to fall. He doesn't chase immortality. He practices immortality through the timelessness of his choices. And ironically, in not seeking to be remembered, he becomes unforgettable. Look at Marcus Aurelius, an emperor, yes, but it's not his rule we remember. It's his reflections in a journal never meant to be published. It's his struggle to remain good while surrounded by power. It's his commitment to humility, even while wearing a crown. That's the paradox. Power passed. Empires fell. But his character remained, and still speaks today, to you, to me, to every soul searching for something deeper than success. And that's the invitation. Not to mimic the Stoics, but to become one in your own right. Not in toga or title, but in how you live when no one is watching. In how you respond to insult, how you carry responsibility, how you endure failure, and how you treat others not when you win, but when you lose. Because respect, true, soul-deep respect, is not earned by being perfect. It's earned by being authentic, by aligning your values with your actions, by becoming the same person in the dark that you are in the light, by standing for something even if you stand alone. That's the man the world trusts. That's the person people follow. That's the kind of presence that lives on in others long after you've gone. And when your final days come, and they will, you won't wonder whether you were popular. You'll wonder whether you lived by what you knew was right. Whether you kept your soul intact while the world tried to buy it. Whether you spoke truth when it trembled in your throat. Whether you stood still while everyone else scattered. Because that's what defines you in the end. Not your titles. Not your followers. But your habits, those silent choices made daily, those unseen sacrifices, those moments when you could have turned away, but didn't. So let the others chase status. Let them beg for attention, for noise, for hollow admiration. You choose the harder road. Choose the long game. Choose principle. And over time, without effort, without demand, you will notice something shift. The world will start to move differently around you. Not because you told them who you are, but because you showed them. And you showed them, not through declarations, but through discipline. Not through speeches, but through stillness. Not by chasing influence, but by becoming influential through how you endured, how you rose, how you carried yourself in both triumph and trial. That's what the Stoic understands, that true power is never imposed, only revealed. It is revealed in the moment you choose restraint while your pride begs to be unleashed. It is revealed when you remain kind in the face of cruelty, when you uphold your word while the world forgets theirs, when you remain upright while others bend for gain. The Stoic knows this is how legacies are born. Quietly. Not with monuments, but with moments. Not with applause, but with alignment. He knows that every day offers two choices, comfort or character, and the one you choose most often becomes who you are. And that's what makes him dangerous to the weak and magnetic to the strong. Because in a world of compromise, he is unmoved. In a world of confusion, he is precise. In a world that sells everything sacred for attention, he holds the line, unshaken, unyielding, unbought. He doesn't perform his values. He becomes them. That's why respect follows him. Because he doesn't chase it. He earns it in sweat, in silence, in sacrifice. It clings to his name not because it was shouted, but because it was lived. And over time, people come to him, not for entertainment, not for gossip, not for ego strokes, but for truth. Because they know he won't flatter them. He'll challenge them. And that challenge, that friction, is where growth begins. So yes, you will be misunderstood. You will be mocked. You will be underestimated by those who measure worth by applause. But let them laugh. Let them wander. You walk. And as you do, step by step, principle by principle, you will begin to feel a quiet force building in you. Not arrogance. Not superiority. but peace. A kind of peace the world cannot give, and therefore cannot take away. And when that peace is fully formed in you, you will not need to raise your voice to be heard. Your life will speak. Your actions will echo. Your discipline will cast a long, quiet shadow that others cannot escape. And one day, maybe when you least expect it, someone will pull you aside, with reverence in their eyes, and say what no trophy, no paycheck, no headline can give. I don't know what it is, but there's something about you. I trust you. I respect you. And in that moment, you'll understand. You didn't earn their respect in a day. You earned it every day. Every morning you rose when it was easier to sleep. Every time you held your tongue when it was easier to speak. Every time you kept your integrity when it cost you something real. This is the legacy of the Stoic. Not just a man admired in his lifetime, but a man remembered long after. Not for what he achieved, but for what he embodied. And that is the kind of respect no one can ever take from you.